So I just want to give some background context to this chapter, which is remember that the big question of the second sex is to try to find out um, the origin of the way that we've created gender roles, how those roles perpetuate each other, how they're justified, and how they produce hierarchy. So this chapter is really focused on you know, how has woman become the inessential other? Well, maybe it's whatever her role is in reproduction. Maybe it's because maybe her position is necessary because of the role she plays in reproduction, what her biological body is like. And the chapter at first is kind of aiming at a kind of metaphysical necessity, this idea that there's a kind of philosophical logic to sexual differentiation, like if male and female form some kind of cosmic whole. So you can read like, there has to be duality everywhere, mind, body, reason, emotion, male, female, that these are just sort of the way that the world is structured. And if it seems a bit tedious in this chapter that she goes over all these different biological formations, parthenogenesis, all kinds of different stuff, that's because she's trying to show, the world really isn't like that if you look directly at the biological facts. The biological facts do not show us tidy male-female distinctions. They don't show us tidy relationships to the gametes, and they don't show us consistent ways that people who hold certain, or organisms that carry certain gametes have specific roles in reproduction and rearing the young. And so she just kind of wants to look at the body as a kind of animal body, and the human body as a kind of animal body, and say, can we get anything necessary out of the way that this works? And she's mostly going to say no. Just pause that. So an important distinction for this chapter, because it's going to seem like you're just kind of being bombarded by biological facts, is the difference between the body and the lived body. Now, this is actually a methodological difference. So the body as a physical organism is, in a way, what we know about the body is determined by the way that we approach it to find knowledge. So when we find biological knowledge about the body, we're cutting it up, we're measuring it, we're looking through microscopes, whatever, we're studying it, we're looking at monkeys in a zoo, whatever, I don't know. But when we look at human beings from the perspective of the perspective of a lived body, right? So the body as it is for me, that is for the phenomenologist, which Beauvoir is a phenomenologist, I'll explain that. The lived body is ontologically prior to the body of biology. Let me write that in there. Ontologically prior. What that means is that the lived body is what we have access to before we have access to the biological body. So what's another example of this? Visual consciousness. So the fact that we can see, what it's like to be able to see, visual consciousness is ontologically prior to ophthalmology, optometry, any other study of the eye, right? And so the phenomenologists think that we get it wrong by saying, oh, that body that we're studying, that we come up with facts about from our instruments for measurement, that's the real body. The lived body is like things that we make up and we're wrong about. The phenomenologist says, look, what's most ontologically basic to me is my experience of the world, and that makes possible any other knowledge of the world. And so the lived body, as it appears to me, now I'm not going to say like the lived body is truer than the body of biology. That's not really the point. The point is that the lived body is a foundational philosophical aspect of experience that gets missed and covered over when we say that the body of biology is all that we have. We're missing that lived experience. So, for example, on page 44 in the biology chapter, she says, these biological data are of extreme importance. They play an all-important role and are an essential element of woman's situation. So situation is about her lived body. We will be referring to them in all further accounts because the body is the instrument of our hold in the world. So the body makes possible the lived body. We have to have a body in order to be living and taking in meaning, right? But this is how we take in that meaning, is by living it through consciousness. The body is the instrument of our hold on the world. The world appears different to us depending on how it is grasped. Yeah, so things are tall or short depending on how tall or short you are, which explains why we have studied these data so deeply. They are one of the keys that enable us to understand woman. But we refuse the idea that they form a fixed destiny for her. So that's why she's spending so much time undercutting the idea of one universal experience of a female body. That's a definite target of this chapter. And she's definitely targeting this idea that whatever the gametes are doing, the egg and the sperm, somehow informs whatever kind of sex roles we should be taking on, whatever kind of gender roles we should be taking on, and that the fact that we have two different gametes and that one is located in this kind of body and one is located in that kind of body, generally and typically, but not always, that somehow that justifies a male-female binary. And she's very much against that. She's against this view that that we can draw those very distinct lines and that they lead to gender. Okay, so let's get back to this passage in the middle of 44. We refuse the idea that they form a fixed destiny for her. So we don't ignore, we don't say, oh, there's no differences and the body doesn't matter at all, gender's a fiction, blah, blah. No, there is, you know, our bodies determine the ways in which we're able to be in the world. But we refuse the idea that they form a fixed destiny. They do not suffice to constitute the basis for a sexual hierarchy. They do not explain why woman is the other. They do not condemn her forever to this subjugated role. So the idea here is that whatever body and biological differences that you might have, that body as the basis for your lived body, which is sort of our conscious ability to make sense of the world, that's not lesser in a woman or in someone with a female body or someone with specific gametes. We all have this, you know, meaning-making perspective. Okay.